Well, the first Pride for Twin Cities and for me originated with Gay House, which was formed in 1971. Gay House folks said, let's have a picnic in Loring Park, which was just a few blocks away from Gay House, which was on Ridgewood Avenue, in the heart of the quote gay ghetto.
It was interesting. We were actually, I mean, that sounds cowardly, but it wasn't really. We were very afraid of being arrested. We were almost sure, because the whole thing about gay rights was very new. And our plan was to have a picnic in Loring Park, and then we were going to march down Nicollet Mall and cross the street and then march back to Loring Park. So about 50 people showed up for Pride, and our plan became that what we would do is we would leave half the people in Loring Park with money so they could bail us out of jail, and the other half of us would walk down Nicollet Mall all the way to 4th Street, cross over by the old NSP building, and then walk back. And nothing happened.
The first march we had was down Nicollet Mall, and that created quite a bit of, shall we say, discomfort for the folks downtown, mostly business people who didn't like having sidewalks blocked by this contingency of people. By the time we reached 1974, there were literally 1,000, 2,000 people marching. So it was big. I mean, it exploded. It really did explode almost overnight.
The first Pride Festival I went to, of course it was in Loring Park, was in June of 1983. I had seen the Pride publication for that year, and it was just a remarkable experience. It was pretty small in those days. You were talking a few thousand people, whereas of course it's grown astronomically since then. The parade route back then started over at the Calhoun Beach. There was a gay beach kind of at 32nd and East Calhoun Boulevard. So it would start right there, and then it would go up Hennepin and Lyndale into the park. The festival was more like, you know, kind of a small town gathering, I guess you'd say. You know, lots of singers, musical people, but again, the entertainment was, you know, pretty homespun, you might say. There was just one stage.
My first LGBT Pride was actually in St. Louis in 1981, and there were 100 of us on the street, some folks wearing paper bags. And it was scary. There were 100 of us. Even though I grew up in New York, I had gone to grad school in St. Louis, and really the sort of hyper-femininity of St. Louis, which was really a southern city, and really being very different in Minnesota. So all of that leads up to my first Pride in 1986. Because I had, again, come with these expectations. How many people are going to be there? Is it going to be scary? Are there going to be people with their bags on their heads? You know, how safe this is going to be? And I was also in a job where I was being paid to be a lesbian. And I also remember walking around Lake of the Isles in June 1986 with all the women with short hair wearing flannel shirts and thinking, look at all the lesbians! And I didn't quite know at the time that that was just being Minnesotan.
I didn't really get involved with Pride until I was working for Amazon bookstore, the feminist bookstore, and that was because we were right on Loring Park, you know, and I was working for them in the early 90s. Mostly a gay boy thing, and, you know, I hate to put it in those terms, but that's what it was like. And so the women who were on the committee, they were never heard, or they felt they were never heard, and they were basically there for show. They, you know, weren't really able to convince the guys, well, you know, women should be a part of this too. Guys didn't think of it that way. They thought of it as predominantly a gay male thing.
The term gay pride, I think, there's an interesting history to it as to where that term came from. It was started by Tom Higgins, who was a member of the student group at the University of Minnesota, Fight Repression of Erotic Expression. He became a monk, and he learned very quickly that the Catholic Church was defining pride as a sin. And he got tired of being a monk, and he came back home, and he took the term. He took two sins of the Catholic Church, pride and gay, and combined it into one phrase and used the term gay pride. It was a term that caught on locally and then spread very quickly nationally and then went worldwide.
Actually, the person who threw the pie in Anita Bryant's face was Tom Higgins. He was a local fellow from the Twin Cities.
Well, at least it's a fruit pie.
That was also the time in those very, very first years of Pride that you couldn't have homosexual literature on you, otherwise you could be arrested here in Minnesota for carrying homosexual literature and distributing homosexual literature. But that was why when we made the very first Pride, it was very flat and it folded over and it was shaped like a Frisbee. We wanted them so that if the police raided the Pride Festival, we could flip them away like a Frisbee and we could say, we don't have any gay literature on us.
Pride said, be proud of who you are, accept who you are, and come and celebrate that. And we'll all be together celebrating one another.
The first couple of years was just kind of, what is that? I mean, what is gay pride? I mean, to be gay is to be happy and they're proud of being happy or something, you know, I mean, they really didn't know, and they honestly didn't know. I mean, quite truthfully, in some of the early years, the straight people would get lesbian and Lebanese confused.
I think it was a commemoration of the anniversary of the Stonewall Rebellion in '69. It was just simply to bring people together, to show, you know, what our community was about and increase visibility.
When I was coming out, it was a march. And then it turned into this celebratory party. Party hardy, party all night, party, party, party. And it became more of a parade, and let's see how outrageous we can look. And we, you know, and people would, oh, I'm going to wear the pink wig, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to wear tights, and, you know, all that. And it ceased to be a political statement. I mean, it's a political statement, but in a very, very different way.
I also know how important pride is and the celebration and all of that stuff for the folks who are just finding their way. And the fact that it's so big and it happens on Hennepin Avenue and those things are on the light posts and how fabulous it is for folks coming from greater Minnesota or from Wisconsin or the Dakotas, because we are the biggest city between Chicago and Seattle, right? And so to be able to come and see that is so affirming.